So guys, polish is a never-ending battle because there's always a little more you can do. For me, polish is ever and ever and ever and ever. Yeah, so for me, polish is the final touches, and it's a pass at trying to make things feel organic. Because the way these CG characters are made, everything's separated out. When you rotate the arm, it's just that part of the arm. It's not involving all those little movements that you get naturally on a living creature's body because of how all the muscle and bone and skin is all connected. So we need to go through and try and mimic some of that as best we can. So we're just adding an extra little layer of making things feel organic, connected, feeling as one organism. Just the final touches. So the thing with polish is it's great and it's amazing and we want to make sure we do it, but it's not going to make your shot all of a sudden work. So if your weight isn't there, if your mechanics aren't there, if your acting's no good, if your lip sync doesn't read, if your expressions don't read, the arcs aren't working, spacing's not working. If that stuff's not working, this isn't going to fix it. This is just sort of adding a little bit of extra on top. The little picture of the dish to the right, that bit of garnish, that little green, does not make it taste good all of a sudden. It just makes it look a little nicer. Another way to think of polish is like, the rest of the shot, that's for the audience. Polish is more for your fellow animators. We're the ones that are going to notice the difference between good polish and not as good of polish. Okay, just going to go over some of the other different tools that I use to help me find any little bit of spacing that I want to tweak or fix an arc and things like that. So the Maya grid is another thing that I use, like I said, to kind of check those arcs, check the spacing. Basically, the grid gives you smaller points of reference for the movement of your character. Sometimes our character's sitting there on this gray background and there's no point of reference besides the edge of the frame. What this grid is going to do is it's going to go in and it's going to give us more points of reference. So we can see that, oh my gosh, this part of his head or his nose here isn't moving, because we can actually tell because of the proximity to these lines. So it just helps with those things. Check your spacing and stuff like that. It's just something to help you figure out if something's wrong or you might be missing it. So that's this button up here, right under the renderer. And then I also turn on wireframe. And this is for when I'm trying to find those spots in the character that it's hard to see because the flat shader or it doesn't have all the textures on there, just to make sure that there aren't any spots on the face or something that are getting weird deformations or spots that they feel like they're dying. There's no movement there, but we expect some, but we can't tell because of the nature of the Maya preview render. So what this does is turn off the grid, and this button here turns on the wireframe. So now we can see, again, just more points. So, as we scrub through this, we can kind of see like where are areas, oh my gosh, like sometimes that cheek won't move at all. It'll just be dead still, but all this stuff is moving really far underneath it and it feels weird. So it can really point out some of those areas that organicness is lacking. So it's a good thing to be utilizing it during your polish phase. Cool. So yeah, polish, you're basically going back through and just being more and more specific. That's why that line between like you're just splining, refining your shot and polish is kind of a blurry one for me, because you're basically just like getting more and more detailed with sort of this, the list of things that you check. But we want to go back through our shot and double check some of the stuff compared to our blocking and stuff, making sure our line of actions are still there. Make sure we didn't lose that nice curve in the spine or hit, tilt, shift that we had. Go back and check for asymmetry. See if there's anything that's twinning too much. Those hands coming down, they're too perfect together. We need to break that up some more. Are there little areas where I can tweak my hand pose from being too perfect to get just a little bit of asymmetry in it? Go ahead and check your silhouettes again. Make sure those are still reading well. And make sure that energy is still working for your shot. The energy, I think, for the most part, is more of a refinement, like a spline pass kind of thing. But we just want to make sure, go back and look at that blocking pass and see and make sure that you've made improvements to all these things and didn't lose any of it that you liked. Cool. So when we're polishing, there is one concern though of over polishing. Sometimes when we get too like tunnel visioned into our shot, we can end up over polishing and losing some of our crispness or sort of that sharpness that we had in our movement. Things get too even, so we get too like zoomed in on our spacing. Sometimes we can go a little too crazy with the fleshiness, like that jaw squash and stretch. We go too far and things feel gooey and weird. So yeah, so when you're doing those fleshiness things, you can change the silhouette a bit, change those volumes a bit, but try not to go too crazy with that. We can also get too over articulating of our lip sync. So we really zoom in and try and like, oh, get that T, and we end up with these way too complicated lip syncs. We get too archy. We start going and really polishing out that arc, and all of a sudden our character's like flying around with these big floaty arms and flourishy stuff. And then yeah, we can lose that zip, crisp movement of our eyes and blink. So that's what you always want when polishing. Play less, but save the previous one and ask yourself, am I liking where this is going? Is this looking better? Okay, it is. Great. Keep moving forward. Or go, no, the other one looked better. Go back, undo, and then either try it again or just leave it as is. Maybe that's exactly how you want it. You don't need to do any more polishing to it.